Now, it seemed like from the last video that Jason really upped his Gene and Roy prop game, so let's see if we can do this right.
Gene and Roy here again, busting some more of those FUD myths. Now, every once in a while we get asked why we use the larger calibers when we're hunting and not the smaller 9mm. And that's because these 9s, they will blow the lungs straight out of a deer. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to heartandlungassociation.com. All right. Tell your mom I said hi.
Well, hello and welcome back, Wizards. I got a bit of a different one for you today, as we're going to be comparing a $4 Mylar blanket versus a $400 Beez Spectralflage to see which one does better to hide you from thermal. And if this whole comparison seems just a little bit ridiculous, well, just wait for the footage. And I'm sure you're asking why I'm doing this comparison, as I certainly know that I am. We made a bit during our thermal blanket video about how Mylar blankets reflect heat instead of blocking it. And kind of that comment about how wearing a mirror all around you isn't the best way to hide from anything. It's making so much noise just being on the ground. Hold on. All right, that should work for now. But we got so many comments about how they thought the Mylar worked great and that it would be, it would be better than having nothing out there in the field. And I don't know if I exactly agree with that statement. So today we're gonna do a ton of ridiculous tests and see how a Mylar blanket actually performs against a real thermal mitigation device. One quick note though, the Beez hide is not designed to be worn and instead is intended to be set up like kind of on a sniper hide. But for the sake of testing, we'll deploy it quickly or just wear it on ourselves. And then in the end, we'll do like an actual test of the real use of it in an actual like sniper hide. Here's some foreshadowing for you. The NASA trash bag does fairly poorly. Now, I think it does help to understand like where this myth came from in order to understand the brain damage of the comments. It was noted by soldiers in helicopters that they couldn't see the Taliban at night because they would cover themselves in space blankets and lay super still, rendering them invisible to thermal. The last article I found that talked about this was from almost a decade ago, and while attack helicopters have some crazy technology, thermal technology has just raced along in the past few years. And from the testing we did today, I have to believe that the US military was actually just using propaganda to try to convince the Taliban that these actually work. Because from what we've seen, it absolutely does not. I also want to note that we're completely ignoring that the Beez thermal blanket works in both visual, thermal, and night vision spectrums. But the space blanket has to be used at night because you could spot this trash bag from a mile away. And in night vision, yep, it's a reflective ass trash bag. So good grief, we're seeing if this Mylar blanket works in one visual spectrum, just heat and only at night. Because at any other time and using any other visual spectrum to see you, you'd absolutely get caught. It's already so stupid, but fine, let's take a look at the actual equipment we're gonna use today. For our Mylar blanket, we have some random Amazon special, as it doesn't matter which $4 blanket you use. The thermal blanket is the Beez Combat Spectralflage that uses a combination of thermal mitigation layers and added breakup to remove the silhouette of a human profile. And the Beez thermal blanket, when you use it correctly, does extremely well in all the different visual spectrums, so I'll put a link to that video up here if you want to see it and all the testing, if you want to see an actual quality product. But if you're here for something stupid, then just stay put. I also want to say a big thanks to Zeiss Optics for letting us use this 450 thermal monocular for all of our testing today on all this ridiculous stuff. And the Zeiss thermal, we did a video on it too, and it's just ridiculous. And it shows you a more realistic level of the type of technology you have to defeat when you're trying to not be seen by thermal. But good grief, you're gonna love this. Let me show you the tests. For the start, I just want to show you what it's like to walk around in these. The hide is, again, not designed for this, but you can see how it does break up the silhouette of the body with a leafy structure. You could move in this very slowly if you needed to. Now, the trash bag. You cannot even walk around in this. The metal sheet is blowing all over the place, and look at the thermal. It just looks like a huge, identifiable trash bag. Just a totally nonchalant man in a trash bag. I mean, if you were watching on thermal, you'd certainly just ignore this guy. And goodness, it's so loud. Now, I want to note this, as the speed of the wind was like 1 mile per hour, and I didn't even notice there was a breeze at all until the stupid poop blanket came out. The material of the Mylar is a literal kite with no way for air to pass through, so it takes off with the slightest bit of wind. And in the story they share with us, the Taliban apparently laid down and made sure not to move. And that's because moving in Mylar is absolutely impossible. For the next test, let's try to do like a makeshift sniper hide, like if I needed to quickly run from a drone somewhere and then hide. That's surely where this $4 trash bag excels, right? Here, the Mylar has no way to lay itself out or connect into anything, so it's just blowing all over. And look at the thermal. It's just a huge black bag on thermal that immediately draws your attention. While you may be hiding your heat signature, now you're this massive blowing bag. And with the inability to secure it in any way, I constantly sat and fought with the Mylar to even try to get my body partially covered with the big black kite that was supposedly hiding me from bad guys. I mean, take a moment. Would that image confuse you in any way? Oh, it's just another one of those trash bags in the woods. Don't even bother going to look and see what it is. There's no point. Whoever's out there who said this was a good idea obviously never tried it because it's so incredibly bad. Like, even my wife was just dying laughing with me just trying to get underneath it and take the footage. Good grief, it's bad. Now let's do the thermal blanket. Here, the blanket has weight to it along with holes to let wind pass through, making wind a non-issue. The thermal blanket also has attachment points and cuts in it to allow it to be attached to objects easily. Here, I set up the hide just silly fast. And look at the thermal. Not only is the human silhouette broken up, but the hide itself looks like the rest of the brush and stuff all around it, making it almost impossible to see the person underneath the hide. One more note is that I can see out easily and see everything through the holes in the thermal hide mesh. With the Mylar, I was just kind of blind to the world. So let's go through it. Don't walk around in the Mylar, don't use it as a thermal blanket, don't use it in the daytime, don't use it in any night vision, and pray to God there's no wind because it's loud as hell. It's just such a great choice, everyone. But what if a drone came? This test simulates exactly that. Like, if we see a drone, I'll go ahead and yell, drone, drone, drone. I'll run over and hide. And what's gonna happen is my wife has to turn the thermal away. She has to count to 5 and then pan around and try to find me. Hold your seats, because this one is great. Let's mix it up and start with the thermal blanket. I start up my trek into the woods and then, drone, 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 drone. Okay, here I'm off. The first thing is I try to just lay down and see if I can break my silhouette up enough. And as we pan over, we see how the thermal hide just isn't really designed for this, as the horizontal heat signature next to the vertical trees kind of gives me away. Now let's try that again with what we've learned, but this time I'll be a little bit closer to the trees and be a little bit more upright to try to hide in that heat signature of the vertical trees. All right, here we go again, just walking through the woods and drone, 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 drone. I quick run my way around and work over to hide behind the trees and drape the thermal hide over it and place myself behind it. Now, we take a look at the thermal as it starts to pan around, and there is again an odd shape form that just looks out of place that gives away my entire position as she knows that I'm there. And what's interesting is the thermal blanket, while not being explicitly designed for this, is doing a great job of breaking up my whole silhouette so you don't just see like a person just standing there. But it just looks out of place to where I'm sitting and where I'm positioned to have this heat blob just like in the middle of the woods. We actually moved to being even closer to the tree, and it's actually a lot better as you can blend in with the heat of the tree itself to hide your signature with the thermal blanket. And using an actual thermal blanket, make sure to use all of your surroundings. Being further back in the brush line makes you absolutely impossible to see. Now though, We should definitely be able to hide from a drone with this bag of farts though, right? All right, here I am traipsing through the woods with my stupidly loud potato chip bag and...
Drone!
Oh, okay, it's time to get to work. I quickly drop down and cover myself, and here our drone goes looking for us, and we move the drone over and it's a huge black body bag. Look at this. I mean, you totally wouldn't look odd at all. And to really drive this stupid home, I do another round where I hide near trees like we did with the thermal blanket. Again, I got my bag of stupid held tightly in my hand, doing some patrols, and... All right, I take off again to the trees and cover myself so I can hide from the drone. And mind you, I can't see a damn thing at all. All right, then our drone starts panning and looking for us, trying to see if we've somehow disappeared in the trees, and nope. There we are, a big, huge-ass stupid bag behind a tree. On thermal, it's just this obviously black metallic thing that immediately gives away your position. I mean, maybe this stupid blanket was like advanced technology in the 2000s. I don't know. But for a means of evading present-day thermals, you have to be the stupidest human on the planet to see a human-sized potato chip bag and just not be bothered by it. For this bit, I'm talking into rocks.
No, sir, yeah, nothing else out here. Just a whole ton more of those human-sized body bags. All right, yeah, unfortunately, I'll keep looking.
Now, though, the thermal we're using has a pretty nice optical zoom, and all the footage I'm showing you so far is from about 100 yards. So let's see what happens if we go even further and test both the thermal blanket and the Mylar from like a ridge line that's a lot further out. Here I hide under the thermal blanket, and again we see the Beez thermal blanket hides our thermal form, but it just looks out of place. Being near a tree or other plants would break this up and make us very hard to see. Now though, what about our bag of dumb? It's probably the most obvious thing in the whole image. The contrast of the thermal properties of the Mylar make you stand out just as much as your entire thermal signature. And even from a distance, you're very obvious to anyone with a thermal. Now, what if we use the... Stop! You're so loud! Now, what if we use the thermal blanket for what it's actually designed for and test it for making an actual thermal hide? Let's assume you have the time and tools to set up a whole hide, but one person has a functional brain and the other one makes daily Facebook posts. Don't pretend like you don't know which one is which. That shit is annoying. Here we let our online political activists start, and we see the Mylar again not having any real way to secure it down, causing it to get caught by the wind as it tries to fly off into the sky. The kite-like style of the Mylar also makes for an eye-catching level of movement on the thermal, as you constantly either get small glimpses of the person underneath, or you get to see them completely. Something interesting also happens as the Mylar warms up and actually shows up on thermal signature as you warm up underneath without any way for the heat to escape. And I want everyone to take a moment to imagine if you had the intelligence to build a sniper hide and then were simultaneously so stupid that you use this to build it with. I couldn't possibly think of something that could be worse to use. And it's so insanely loud. You'd be better off just covering yourself in mud instead of being like the most unalive sniper ever. Moving to our thermal hide though, we see where the Spectralflage just shines. The weight of the blanket and attachment point shows this product is made for exactly this type of work. As we watch on thermal, we see the individual disappear completely. And what's interesting is that the entire sniper hide just blends in with all the other objects in thermal view. As time goes on, we see the hide begins to warm in non-uniform ways, which actually adds additional breakup to the silhouette underneath. And this test is just a textbook example of how a thermal hide works to hide you from both visual and thermal spectrums, while still allowing you to see out and engage from your position. Let's just show a few of these side by side though, so I can just really drive this home. From trying to walk around, to trying to make a fast sniper hide, to even evading a drone, the Mylar Blanket performed so horribly bad. oftentimes working against the user to give away their position immediately. And while this may have worked great in a previous decade, the current technology of our world makes this choice incredibly stupid. And I'm betting the thermal footage is just kind of ignoring how insanely loud this thing is when it's flapping around in the wind. As I said, I'm fairly convinced that the soldiers in the news article about this was actually just a trick to make the Taliban think this thing actually worked when it really, really doesn't. And if you think about it, that would be pretty smart. Hey, Sarge, look at this. We found another one of those dum-dums. But let's answer the original question, is it better than nothing? And I'm so annoyed by this because yes, it's better than nothing, but that really isn't saying much. Like if you're so stupid to bring this instead of something else, you're gonna have far, far bigger problems like addition and subtraction and reading. A far better option is a basic poncho. You can block thermal better than this brain-dead kite, while also giving you protection from the rain and from cold. And it's why so many of our military are issued ponchos and not metallic fart sacks. But thank God, that's the end. What? Spray paint? So it got brought up to spray paint the Mylar, and all right, I'll keep this stupid thing around so we can test it for you. I do want to note that you can also get these Mylar blankets in colors, but it is still super metallic and still sounds like the world is ending when you have it anywhere near you. And I really thought this would be the end of this, but I guess stay tuned for when we spray paint it. Can you tell how excited I am? But I hope this comparison of the $4 versus $400 thermal blankets was useful in your purchasing decisions and your survival strategies. I want to say thanks to all of our Patreon supporters and all of our YouTube members. You make it possible we can see all this stuff, and thanks for having me do all this ridiculous testing. I just love you for it. And I want to say thanks to everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes. Comment down below as to which blanket you would pick. All right, everyone, ball shout. FUD myths. Now, every once in a while, we get asked why we don't hunt with this. Yeah, these are very difficult. They will blow the lung straight out of a deer. If you long, I keep messing it up. I figured here at the end it would be fun to read some of the comments. Like, I'll see if I can put a link to the short where you can find these gems. What does it say? Someone has to work the noise kinks out. Once that happens, deadly. No. Next one. John Harley, did you do this? Can you spray paint them? This is your fault, but we did this. Someone says, looks like you need a bigger blanket. I think the emergency blanket as a thermal is just that, an emergency tool that might come in handy if you need it. No. Well, maybe if you're cold. Yeah, it'll work great if you're cold. I'm sure it does that. Could be effective against UAVs in forested areas. Well, don't we know better than that now? Let's chew one more. The good old tactical disco ball. At least that one is accurate. Like how you keep the crinkle going after you cut away. So do you just glue pieces of this to your face? Yeah, that's exactly what you do. All right, this is enough. I have to go spray paint this now. Ugh. All right, go away.